Okay, hello, and welcome back to Tone on a Budget, which is where I sit here in my room and I review the equipment that I've purchased. I go through a lot of gear, and I buy, sell, and trade all the time. Um, the good stuff, the stuff that I really like, stays, and the stuff that I'm not crazy about, it goes fairly quickly. I don't keep it very long. And I just keep buying, selling, and trading, and trying stuff out. And as I get it, I review it for you. And I'm not rich by any means. I work hard for my little bit of money that I get. So I look for things that um, don't cost a relatively large amount of money, but are still good. And that goes especially for amplification. Um, you can spend a lot of money on a tube amplifier, and I look for stuff that, diamonds in the rough. So today, we're going to talk about this beast. This is the Marshall Origin 50 sitting on top of a Marshall MX212 cabinet. Let's start off with a few things you need to know if you decide you want to buy one of these. All right. Number one, the tubes that these things ship with suck. It's a mixture of Marshall branded JJs and Marshall branded Chinese Shiguangs. JJs I've never been a fan of. I think they sound brittle, and they I don't think they produce a good tone. I think they're stark and harsh, and I don't like them. The Shiguangs are very bright. They're good, robust tubes. I'll say that they last a really long time. You can pound the snot out of them, and they just keep working. But they don't have a whole lot of dynamics. They don't have a whole lot of life to them, which is what you want that in a tube. You want those dynamics, that react to your touch on the guitar. Um, Shiguangs don't tend to do that very well. They work though, but you're going to want to, if you really want the plexi tones, you're going to want to change the tubes. And on the 50, you'll have to bias it. The rest of them, the lower wattage versions, are cathode biased. You just pop the tubes in, put your power tubes in, and go. Um, with the 50s, you have to bias the power section, but it's real easy. You just pull the chassis out, flip it over. There's two test points for positive and negative, and a trim pot, and you set that trim pot to Marshall spec with the power tubes that you just installed. If you're not used to doing stuff like that, really, if you haven't done it before, you probably shouldn't, unless you have somebody with you showing you how to do it, because there are lethal voltages in these things. They can kill you, even when they're not plugged in, because the capacitors can hold uh, 540 volts, and you discharge one of those capacitors, and you're going to go flying across the room. Um, anyway, that being said, if you don't know how to bias an amp, get somebody who does know how to show you how to do it and show you what to avoid and what not to touch. Because you touch the wrong thing in one of these things and you're having a bad day. That being said, change the tubes. Okay, that's first. All right. Now with the low budget cabinets that you can buy with these things, the speakers that ship in them are Celestion 7080s. Like the tubes that the amp ships with, they suck. They're bright and they're brittle and they sound nasty and I can't stand them. They're horrible speakers. They really are. And I've seen guys online going, "Hey, let it break in. You might like it." Well, I've got one over here in an MX112 that I've got my DSL 20 sitting on top of, and I gave it a good fair shake of playing and seeing if it would warm up as it broke in. 3 weeks later, after playing through it almost every day, it still sounded like crap. So I pulled it out and I put another speaker in it. I'll get into that on another day. Um, I replaced the speakers in this with, here we go, back to the budget minded thing. Eminence makes a line of speakers called Legend. Um, I replaced the two 7080s with Eminence Legend GB128s. Um, they're very greenback like. They have a very greenback voice to them. Only they've got a little wider bandwidth, and they handle more watts than the standard greenback. The standard greenback is only a 25 watt speaker. They do make a 65 watt, but it sounds different from the 25 watt. These are modeled, I think, after the 25 watters, but with more frequency bandwidth and twice the power. They're 50 watts apiece. Okay, so the cabinet will handle 100 watts. The amp puts out 50. I'm golden there. All right. The speakers cost about half what a greenback will cost you. One greenback will cost you about $160. One of these costs you about 70. And they're really great sounding speakers. Plus, unlike a lot of other speakers I've tried, they sound good the day you install them. You don't have that break-in period like you do with some other ones. Yeah, they're still stiff from the factory, but they sound good even while they're breaking in. They start out sounding good, and then they just get better as they break in. These are nicely broken in. I've had a couple other amps on top of this cabinet, so these speakers are broken and they sound really good. All right, to the controls. On the Origin, we have, the first one is presence. I run that right up the middle at 12 o'clock. The second one is the master, the sweet spot. If you want to drive those power tubes, which is what we want out of a Plexi style amp, the sweet spot is at about 8. You're dang near cranked. You go past that, it kind of gets nasty sounding. It starts to break up, and you lose the tone. But right about 8 is right at where it wants to be. It just sounds beautiful. I'm running the treble at about 10 o'clock. I'm running the mids at noon, and I'm running the bass at about 9 o'clock, because this amp can get woofy, especially with the tubes that I've got in it. It definitely puts out some bass. I can probably plug my bass into this thing and plug it into a bass amp, and it would sound good, okay? Which is what they did back in the day. They didn't have bass amps. They used guitar amps. So it does put out a lot of bass. You're going to want to turn down the bass on this thing. And then the next one, that one there is called the tilt knob. And what the tilt knob does is, the old Plexis had 4 channels, 4 inputs for 2 channels. All right. And what you did was one was a bright channel, one was a dark channel. And you could jump the 2 channels and then plug your guitar into it, and you would be using a blend of the 2 channels. Each channel had its own volume, and you could blend that channel with the other one to get the tone that you wanted, both bright and dark. And that's how Plexis worked. This does the same thing, except instead of having excuse me, to jump 2 channels and blend them with 2 volume controls, the tilt control blends the 2. Just like the Plexi would with 2 controls. It's 1 control, and you blend the light and dark side. You can go all the way dark, all the way bright. I'm running my tilt control at, it's at about 2 o'clock. And then the last one is gain, which is something the Plexis didn't have. You can turn up or turn down the gain on this thing. I run my gain on this here. It's also at about 2 o'clock. Sounds really nice and full. Okay, so there's the controls. It has foot switch, 2-channel foot switch here. One for boost, which turns on a boost for the gain, or turns it off. And the other one turns on and off the effects loop. I don't use the effects loop. And right now I'm plugged straight into the amp. You have 3 taps in the back for speakers. You have one for an 8-ohm speaker, one for a 16-ohm speaker, and another one for 2 8-ohm speakers combined, so that you, 2 16-ohm speakers, so that you end up with 8 ohms. You can run 2 16-ohm cabinets at 8 ohms. You can't go lower than 8 ohms with this amp. It's either 1 8 or 2 16s. I'm running at 116. I've got this cabinet wired for 16 ohms, and that's the tap I'm using on the transformer. All right, I think that's it. I think those are the only points I need to make. Now for the demonstration, I'm going to be using my 2002 Gibson SG Standard, all stock. I'm going to start off on the bridge position with it cranked, with gain at normal, and then I'll kick in the boost. Oh, and by the way, I have this on half power. On 50 watts, it's way dead loud. It's a really loud amp. It sounds awesome at 50 watts. But right now I've got it at the half watt setting, and it's still really loud. Now, you hear how articulate that is. You hear all the notes in the chord. Now, if you turn down the volume on the guitar, it cleans up really nice. Throw a little reverb on that with a reverb pedal, and it's beautiful. All right, now I'm going to go back to the bridge pickup, and I'm going to play a little bit, and then I'm going to kick in the boost so you hear the difference. Anyway, there you go. That's the Marshall Origin. I highly recommend this amp. I've had it now for a while, and it just sounds beautiful. It'll cut through a mix. It develops some really nice tones. It's got a lot of. It's very diverse. I mean, you can go clean. It's a great pedal platform. I got a bunch of pedals. I got 11 pedals that I run through this thing sometimes, and it eats them up. It loves them. Couple of different overdrives, reverb, delay, chorus. What else? What else do I got on there? Oh, flange. I've got phaser. I got an octaver, a fuzz box. It just takes them all really nice, and it just puts out good sound. So good tone on a budget. There you go. The amp itself, I believe, is like $550. The head, the cabinet's like $350, and then a set of tubes will cost you another $50, and a set of speakers will cost you another $140. And after you've said and done all of that, you still spent way less than you would have on something that was made by Marshall in England. These are made in Vietnam. And from what I can tell, they're doing a good job. They've really got their game together with these. I know at first when they started manufacturing stuff in Vietnam, they had all kinds of QC issues. And I had a couple of those amplifiers. I had a Marshall MA in here that I think I had it for 5 days and it blew up. It smoked. And I just took it back. I got it at a store. I took it back to the store that I got it at. It was terrible. It didn't sound very good either. But they've really got their stuff together with the Origin series, and the DSL series too is a really nice series. But that's another one you're going to want to change the tubes, and you're going to change, if it's a combo, you're going to want to change out the speaker to cut some of that bright brittleness. They all sound really bright out of the factory, and I don't know why they're shipping them like that and not putting in different tubes and different speakers. They can do it and still, probably be within budget for the manufacturer of the thing, but they're not. Anyway, there you go. I hope this has been helpful. Y'all have a great day, and stay safe, stay well, avoid the Rona, avoid that COVID-19 stuff, stay home, play guitar, and God bless.